Good afternoon. Today is March 15th, and welcome to the voting session of the Ways and Means Committee. First, we have House Bill 428, and there are amendments. Delegate Eversole.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 428 came in as a bill that would have had community schools coordinators identifying students who were in housing crisis and helping them with cash. And the bill has been amended, and as amended, it still has community schools coordinators identifying those students somewhat organically, but with the kind of investigations they do, and then helping them to hook up with DHCD to get help if they need it. And so that's pretty much the whole bill now. There's a couple of details, but I moved the amendments.
Any discussion on the amendments? Okay, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion on the amendments passed. Motion on the bill as amended.
Move favorable.
Any discussion on the bill as amended? Delegate, who said that? Oh, Delegate Hornberger.
Yeah, just on the bill, and this came up during sub, I've got some major concerns about this bill in terms of equity. So if you are as identified in the bill currently, meet the criteria for low income, and you are enrolled in a school that is not a community school, you would not be eligible or identified under this bill. So the idea here is that if you are of significant poverty, however, you attend a school that is not a concentration of poverty school, you will not have the same benefits afforded to you as someone who is. So that's why I'll be voting no on the bill.
Was that discussed in subcommittee?
Yes.
What was the response?
It was discussed in subcommittee, and the bill was originally intended to aim at concentrations of poverty. And even despite the concerns, we moved favorable on the bill as is. We did have 2 votes nay in the committee.
Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you to the delegate for the concern. I just wanted to chime in because I have another community schools bill. I wanted to flag that I do think that this bill is appropriate because we spend hundreds of millions of dollars in the blueprint for the concentration of poverty grants for community schools. So schools that are getting that grant and what this bill is focusing in on is our highest need schools and highest need areas. So it's appropriate to also make sure that if a student is housing insecure, that they're being referred. So it makes complete sense to me in this bill that we are basing it on where we are spending our dollars in terms of the highest need areas that have the concentration of poverty grants.
Delegate Hornberger.
Yeah, if I may, and I just want to speak globally to what was just said. If people respond to incentives, and I believe that if we continue to overly incentivize concentration of poverty schools, that it could lead to packing, whereas you are designating students to go to schools to meet certain criteria and thresholds so that you can receive more funding for said school. And I think that's counter to the program. So I believe that this is a well-intentioned bill. However, especially in rural areas, I think our students are going to suffer because they won't have access to this program. Thank you. Any
other discussion? Delegate Grossman.
For a point of clarification, in light of COVID, schools were given funds to do kind of exactly this right now. And so is this just permanently putting those funds in place so that those resources are in the school system to help homeless families?
Delegate Eversole.
Madam Chair, there is, the only way that this will be funded is through the budget. It appears there is money in the budget for it right now. And so we're hopeful that the program will live in this way, but there's no code for, I can do this. There's no dollars in the code for this, right, on this bill.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? Okay, we are going to do a roll call on House Bill 428 as amended. On a favorable, Madam Vice Chair.
Yes.
Delegate Eversole.
Me too.
No.
Delegate Patterson.
Yes.
Delegate Buckle. Delegate Wells. Delegate Hornberger. Delegate Fair. Delegate Long. Delegate Young. We can't do me too because we were secondary, so we're not doing the amendments. Delegate Miller is not here. Delegate Henson. Delegate Roberts. Delegate Grossman. Delegate Wims. Delegate Vogel. Delegate Wu. Delegate Hartman. Delegate Miracle North. Delegate Griffith. Delegate Attar. Delegate Plavkovich Carr. Delegate Feldmark. House Bill 428 passes favorably as amended. House Bill 787. Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 787 establishes the Allegheny Regional Recreational Economic Development Authority in Allegheny County to support the development and construction of regional recreation facilities to benefit residents and the economic development of the county. Move favorable.
Any discussion? Other than the sponsor problem? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, House Bill 787 passes favorably. House Bill 823, and there are amendments. E and T was primary, so we are secondary. Delegate Attar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill establishes certain requirements for smoke detectors in residential rental high-rise buildings. It requires residential rental high-rise buildings to provide notice if the building is not protected by an automatic sprinkler system. It authorizes local governments to grant a property tax credit to an apartment or condo building if the owner makes fire safety improvements, and it establishes a work group on fire safety best practices for high-rise apartment buildings. The amendments delay certain requirements until 2025, add cooperative housing corporations to the bill, and makes other changes. Move the amendments.
Any discussion on the amendments? Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this amendment will not require for the installed sprinklers. Is that right? It's not a mandate, right? Because I heard a lot of concern for old buildings. They don't have the money to do really renovations. And they probably bankrupt then.
It's not a mandate.
Okay.
No.
So, but when we say delay to 2025, what does that mean? Like eventually we're just moving forward somehow?
So I could tell you that it's in Ways and Means because of the tax credit that it's giving. So for
Mhm.
your concern when it comes to old buildings, they can't afford to do it.
Mhm.
That's why we have this tax credit in place.
But it's still mandated to do the sprinkler, is that right? Or
Yeah, so the amendment has nothing to do with that. I thought you were asking on the amendment.
kind of both, probably.
Okay, well, let's get through the amendment
Okay.
first. So Delegate Hartman.
If you're on the amendment, then
Okay, let's move the amendments. All in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion on the bill. Okay, discussion on the bill. Delegate Hartman.
thank you, Madam Chair. So, does this eventually lead to then sprinklers? Is that what it does?
Yes. Mr. Ward.
So this just requires them to, if the building doesn't have a sprinkler system, it requires a notification. So they would have to post it in the building. It would also have to be put in the lease agreement. This does not mandate sprinklers.
Okay, when you say co-ops, does that mean like condominium associations?
Those are already in the bill. It's cooperative housing corporations that are being added. Same requirements as apply to condo and apartment buildings.
So any multifamily, what constitutes high rise? How many stories? 7 or more? Okay, thanks.
Yes, correct.
Thank you.
Delegate Wu.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So with amendment, that means we don't require them to install sprinklers, but if they want to install, we give them a tax credit. Okay, thank you.
Any other discussion? Delegate Buckle.
Madam Chair, so if I read this correctly, and obviously this wasn't a bill that probably almost any of us saw, we just have it because it's a tax credit. The tax credit is enabling back to the 24 jurisdictions. There's no limit, cap, regulation, rule on what the tax credit would be. It's up to them to decide. I mean, I can tell you for, just doing a lot of construction litigation, to put a sprinkler system into an older building, a 10-story building is, $500,000, maybe somewhere in that range, a little more, a little less, could be more. Do we have any concept of what the property I like giving the property tax credit to do that. It encourages the behavior without taking the loss. Do we have any idea of what the property tax credit would be, or are we just completely punting that to the locals to decide the amounts?
Yeah.
There we
Sounds
go.
good.
Thank you. So we're leaving it up to the locals, as you said. I can tell you, like you mentioned, there is a potential significant decrease in the local property tax revenue
Right.
because of the tax credit. So I can't say the amount that it'll be because it's up to the locals, but yes, it is a tax credit and they can set the amount.
And so it's weird. I mean, I want to vote for the tax credit portion of parts of our bill. I'm not sure that I like some of the other portions of the bill about, so it does mandate, it does not mandate sprinklers, it just mandates the sign. It does mandate some things with respect to smoke detectors, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
And that's the part that it was an ENT for, but yes.
Right, so you're gonna put, I mean, smoke detectors are fine, but you're gonna put more and more and more of them. You have to put them basically on the side of every wall and every hallway. Is that the way I'm reading it?
It has to be consistent with the National Fire Protection Association standards, and it lists a bunch of standards in there, but yes.
Okay, thank you for the, okay, I like the tax credit part, but some of the other stuff, I'm not too sure. Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to do. Yep.
And then maybe does anybody know, I mean, I can look it up, but does anybody know what the vote was in the Environment and Transportation Committee? The people who really considered some of this regulatory stuff up close.
It was unanimous.
Fair enough, thank you.
Delegate Long?
I have a question, Madam Chair.
Mhm.
I thought I read in the bill real quickly that it said that there's a $1,000 fine if a smoke detector was installed within 10 days. Did I read that correctly?
So go.
Thank you. So the existing penalty provisions apply to violations of these provisions. So the answer is correct. If you violate, it's up to 10 days of imprisonment and up to $1,000 fine. That's the existing penalty provisions. They apply
That's
to this.
Existing now.
Yes, they apply to
Okay.
this as well.
And who would enforce that? Would it be local?
I believe so. I would assume whoever enforces any of the local laws would enforce this, but Stan, do you have something in specific?
I think it's the state fire marshal.
That makes-
I believe so.
All right, thank you.
Any further discussion? On the bill? Yeah, I move favorably. We did the amendments.
Further discussion.
Yeah, on the bill. Madam Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Colleagues, very unfortunately, it was my constituent Melanie Diaz that died in a fire last year in her apartment building in my district. And I am really glad they were able to move forward with this Fire Safety Act out of this committee. We honored her last year by memorial. This year by memorial, it's been the 1 year since her death, and the Senate did honor her parents and her family on the floor earlier this year. And so on behalf of the entire committee, I just would like to share my condolences once again. And I'm pleased that we are potentially moving forward with this bill. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, on the favorable as amended, all in favor signify by saying aye. Any opposed? Okay, the bill passes favorably as amended. House Bill 919, Delegate Attar.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This bill authorizes county governments to set special tax rates for certain classes of property to finance transportation projects and the blueprint. I move to refer this to interim study.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor of the summer study signify by saying aye. Opposed? Okay, that will be taken up this summer. House Bill 1281, and there are amendments. Delegate Feldmark.
Thank you, Madam Chair. House Bill 1281 authorizes Baltimore City, counties, and municipalities in the state to designate specified tourism zones and exempt the gross receipts from any admissions or amusement charge levied by a qualifying tourism enterprise in a tourism zone from admissions and amusement taxes, and authorizes counties and municipalities to grant property tax credits against real and personal property taxes to qualifying tourism enterprises located in a tourism zone. There is an amendment which clarifies the application of the admissions and amusement tax exemption under the bill. Move the amendment.
Discussion on the amendment, Delegate Hornberger?
Yes, thank you. How does one elect a tourism zone?
The process is the local government, I believe, has to approve that because they're the ones who would then be issuing the credits, right? So it would be I believe it's the governing body of the local government.
Right, but is there some sort of statewide necessity or requirement to be a tourism zone? I just,
No.
or do they just have pure
It-
discretion to identify tourism zones?
It's at the local discretion.
Okay, all right.
It's considered an economic development tool, so it's up to the local government if they want to utilize that.
Any other discussion on the amendments? Okay, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, motion on the bill is amended. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Yeah.
Taxes on the Eastern Shore, it's a Hartman bill. Are there tax increases in this one?
House Bill 1281 passes favorably as amended. House Bill 1287, and there are amendments, Delegate Eversol.
Madam Chair, this bill as amended will require an employment contract executed between a county superintendent or a state superintendent or a city or county chief executive officer of a school system. For the superintendent's initial term, the contract shall include a provision that requires the county superintendents to complete during the term of their contract a school leadership course or program. There are some amendments that talk about what some of the additional, not exclusively, but some of the elements that must be included in the training, including a review of research to the benefits to students from access to high quality and diverse teachers, methods to attract highly qualified and diverse teachers, best practices for teacher retention, including teachers from diverse backgrounds, and a number of other research concepts that will go into it. Move these amendments to the bill.
Is there a second? Any discussion on the amendments? Okay, all in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion on the bill is amended.
Move favorable.
Any discussion? Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? House Bill 1287 passes favorably as amended. House Bill 1441, and there are amendments. And the fantabulous Mr. Allister is going to go over those amendments.
So, as amended, the bill makes numerous changes to the publicly funded pre-kindergarten program, including by creating an early childhood educator career ladder for eligible private pre-K providers, altering provisions for waivers granted to private pre-K, pre-kindergarten provider slots, requiring agreements between local boards and relevant agencies, authorizing capital improvements to leased spaces, introducing support initiatives for pre-kindergarten providers, and extending funding timelines for grant programs to early childhood education program. I can discuss those in greater detail if you would like.
I move the amendments. Okay, discussion on the amendments. Delegate Hartman. Hit your button.
Thank you. Madam Chair, so does the amendment make this publicly funded like Judy Centers? Or is it publicly funded, you know, regular school, elementary school, and you have a pre-K 3 program?
So the the bill largely deals with the publicly funded pre-kindergarten programs that were passed in the blueprint for Maryland's future. It alters, in some specificity, it alters the requirements for being a teacher in those pre-K schools for private provider teachers. It creates a career ladder for those private providers through which there's 3 levels: teaching assistants, who have to have a high school diploma and by a certain date get a child development associate or an associate's degree, or if they've taught for 15 years, show evidence of that. Second level is a lead teacher, under current law, to qualify as a teacher to get funding under the publicly funded pre-K program, you have to have a teacher who by the 2027-2028 school year who has a bachelor's degree and is pursuing alternative pathways to receive alternative training in early childhood education, or is already certified as an early childhood education teacher. Under the amendments of this bill, there are alternative methods to becoming a teacher for a private pre-K provider. You can have taught for 10 years and work to get your associate's degree by 2030. You can already have a bachelor's degree in which you've majored in education. You can have a bachelor's degree in a different field and undergo an assessment using the class system, which is administered by the State Department of Education. Or you can have a bachelor's degree in early childhood education from a different country and also undergo the class assessment.
So does it require parity in pay with the,
there's already an existing provision that says that pay should be equitable. It doesn't require exact equitable pay. The program is funded through a funding formula that is based on the level of poverty of the family. Sorry, go ahead.
so this bill only then affects, it doesn't affect any of our public schools. It's only for those publicly funded, privately owned Judy centers and things.
There are some.
Whether
It's
it's
for
public,
but
but it's the non-school.
it's for the private providers. So I think we've all heard from our private provider childcare centers.
Challenge.
Right, challenges. And so it's really targeted at helping onboard those folks to help the public school be able to provide for all the 3 and 4-year-olds that we're supposed to be doing under the blueprint, which now most people are getting waivers. So, but the pay scale, no, there's not going to be parity in pay but that's degree dependent.
Okay, thank you.
Delegate Wims. Okay. Delegate Young.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just lifting up the concerns we talked about for Baltimore City. Just confirming that the amendments address first the paraprofessionals being able to be assistants if they have 15 or more years of experience.
In the amendments as introduced, that's true for both public providers and for private.
Thank you. And then the second concern they had to do with the existing program that is in Baltimore City, which provides for the majority of students. Their concern was, of course, that the bill might cause them to have to close classrooms. So just can we put on the record that is not the case under this bill?
Yeah, so there's the current law requires that this year that 35% of all slots for pre-K be private, so there is a waiver provision in current law. This bill, and then that increases to 50% within 3 years from now. This bill changes that slightly, requires that next year there be 10% waivers, increases it, but keeps the waiver provision in place. So it's not a mandate. It can be waived as long as the counties make good faith efforts to work for public.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Any other discussion? Okay, the motion is on a favorable of the bill as amended. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, House Bill. That's what we're voting on, yes. Yeah. Okay, so let me just go around. Raise your hand if you'd like to be a me too. You ready? Excuse me. Madam Vice Chair, Delegate Patterson, Delegate Wells, Delegate Henson, Delegate Roberts, Delegate Grossman, Delegate Wims, Delegate Vogel, Delegate Wu, Delegate Miracle North, Delegate Plakovich Carr, and Delegate Feldmar. Did I miss you? Sorry, Delegate Young. Okay, that concludes our bill hearings for today. We still have some other things that we need to get out, so you may get pulled off the floor at some point today or tomorrow. Or we might have to vote tomorrow briefly, depending on what time we come in here on committee. So just stay nimble. Thank you. That's going to be after crossover on Tuesday.